Thank you for subscribing to this channel. This is a Reading Part C practice video.
The correct answer is A. Duty to care for a patient continues after a referral. And here's why it's the correct answer, along with explanations for why the other options are incorrect. A. Duty to care for a patient continues after a referral. This statement aligns with the information provided in the policy document. The document explicitly states that healthcare professionals must be involved in the safe transfer of patients and must check that a named team or clinician has appropriately taken over responsibility when their role has ended in providing a patient's care. This is particularly important for vulnerable patients who do not have the capacity. The document emphasizes the obligation to ensure that the person receiving the referral has the appropriate skills, qualifications, and experience to provide safe care for the patient. This implies an ongoing duty of care even after the referral. B. Ability to look after a patient should be decided by superiors. This statement contradicts the policy document. The document does not mention that superiors should decide who can look after a patient. Instead, it emphasizes the responsibility of healthcare professionals to ensure that the person receiving the referral has the appropriate skills and qualifications. C. Obligation to check up on transfers does not apply to all patients. This statement is incorrect based on the information provided in the policy document. The document does not suggest that the obligation to check up on transfers varies depending on the patient. On the contrary, it emphasizes the importance of checking that a named team or clinician has appropriately taken over responsibility, especially for vulnerable patients who do not have capacity. Therefore, the obligation applies to all patients, especially those in need of extra protection. In summary, the correct answer, A, is supported by the information in the policy document, which highlights the ongoing duty of care for patients even after a referral, as well as the responsibility to ensure that the receiving healthcare professional is qualified to provide safe care. The other options, B and C, are incorrect because they either contradict the document or misinterpret its content.
Let's look at the next question.
The correct option is indeed C, should only be used on patients as a last resort. Let's break down why this is the correct option and why the other options are incorrect. C, should only be used on patients as a last resort. This is the correct answer because it aligns with the recommended best practices for using physical restraints. Physical restraints should only be used when all other less restrictive interventions have failed, and the patient's behavior poses a significant risk to themselves or others. This approach prioritizes the safety and well-being of the patient and others while minimizing the use of physical restraints, which can have potential risks and ethical considerations. Now, let's discuss why the other options are incorrect. A, can only be administered to patients by qualified staff. While it is important for physical restraints to be administered by trained personnel, this statement alone doesn't capture the full context. Qualified staff are indeed needed to apply physical restraints safely, but this option does not address the timing or appropriateness of restraint use. It's not just about who administers them, it's about when and why they are used. B, must be applied before patients become aggressive. This statement is incorrect. Applying physical restraints before a patient becomes aggressive is not a recommended practice. The use of physical restraints should be considered as a last resort when all other de-escalation methods, including verbal techniques and medications, have failed. Using restraints preemptively can be considered excessive and may lead to adverse consequences. In summary, the guidelines recommend using physical restraints only when all other options have been exhausted and the patient's behavior poses a serious risk. Option C correctly reflects this principle and is the most appropriate choice.
Let's look at the next question.
The correct answer is indeed C, what to do before administering an IV. Let's discuss why this is the correct option and why the other options are incorrect. C, what to do before administering an IV. This is the correct answer because it accurately reflects the primary focus of the provided guidelines. The guidelines provide instructions on what healthcare staff should do before starting the process of administering intravenous IV therapy. These steps include checking the fluid bag, verifying patient details, obtaining consent, and being diligent in calculating the drip rate. All of these actions occur before the actual administration of the IV therapy. Therefore, this option accurately summarizes the main purpose of the guidelines. Now, let's discuss why the other options are incorrect. A. The procedure to follow when fitting an IV. While the guidelines do cover aspects of the procedure for setting up and administering IV therapy, The primary emphasis is on the steps to take before starting the IV administration. The guidelines mention checking the fluid bag, verifying patient details, and ensuring staff introduce themselves and obtain consent, which are preparatory steps. Therefore, this option is too narrow in scope as it focuses solely on the procedure itself, missing the critical pre-administration steps. B. How to check for issues with IV infusions. While the guidelines mention checking the fluid bag for damage and ensuring the liquid inside it is clear, this is only a small part of the broader context of what healthcare staff should do before administering IV therapy. The guidelines also cover aspects such as verifying patient details, obtaining consent, and calculating the drip rate, which go beyond just checking for issues with IV infusions. Therefore, this option is not comprehensive enough to capture the main purpose of the guidelines. In summary, the main focus of the provided guidelines is on the preparatory steps and precautions that healthcare staff should take before administering IV therapy. Option C correctly reflects this emphasis and is the most appropriate choice.
Let's look at the next question.
The correct answer is indeed B. Aware that even minor illnesses can be distressing for parents. Let's explain why this option is correct and why the other options are incorrect. Be aware that even minor illnesses can be distressing for parents. This option is correct because it accurately reflects the main message of the email. The email is advising pediatricians to recognize and acknowledge the concerns and distress that parents may experience when seeking care for their children, even for relatively minor conditions. It emphasizes the importance of spending time talking to these parents, offering reassurance and support, and understanding that their concerns are valid. The email suggests that addressing parental distress proactively can lead to better outcomes and reduced communication demands in the long run. Now, let's discuss why the other options are incorrect. I'm mindful that parents may not always agree with the proposed treatment. While this statement may be important in pediatric care, it is not the primary focus of the email. The email is primarily addressing the need to recognize and address parental distress, especially for minor illnesses, rather than focusing on disagreements about treatment plans. C. Understanding and patient when explaining conditions to children. This option is not the main message of the email. While effective communication with children is essential in pediatric care, the email primarily emphasizes the importance of addressing parental distress and providing support and reassurance to parents. In summary, The main purpose of the email is to advise pediatricians to be aware of the distress parents may experience when seeking care for their children, even for minor illnesses. Option B accurately reflects this message and is the correct choice.